Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full preview for you of an upcoming Tier 10 Chinese heavy tank. This is the WZ-111 5A. The WZ-111 5A kind of blurs the lines between a medium tank and a heavy tank. Not only does it have a big gun, 130mm main armament with 490 alpha damage, but it can go at 50 kilometers an hour. Its frontal armor, while not the strongest, and it does have its weak points, is still decent. And when you combine this with an impressive DPM of about 2,600 and 7 degrees of gun depression, this is certainly looking like a tank to watch out for. This video will let you know everything there is to know about the WZ-111 5A. Firstly, running down the statistics of this vehicle and showing you how it stacks up to its Tier 10 competition in the form of the 113 and the IS-7, and then I'm going to follow it up with some ace tanker gameplay. And if you have no interest in picking up this Tier 10 Chinese heavy tank, then stick around anyway and I'll show you how to take them out effectively on the battlefield. So firstly, statistics. Let's see how the WZ-111 5A stacks up compared to its Tier 10 Chinese heavy tank counterpart, the 113, and also the infamous IS-7. So immediately we notice that the 5A has great DPM for a Tier 10 heavy tank. It's over 2,600, just like the 113. And that's because the vehicle's monstrous 130mm main armament, which is the same caliber as the IS-7 and packs 490 alpha damage, just fires pretty much an extra round a minute over the IS-7. In fact, the DPM of this vehicle is over 20% higher than the traditional Tier 10 Soviet heavy. And when I was playing with the vehicle, I certainly did feel this DPM advantage. It's only the T57 heavy and the FV-215B that have higher DPMs than the Chinese heavy tanks, and this advantage can simply allow you to pick apart your opponents quickly before they take you down. A passing mention should also be made to the fact that this vehicle carries 40 rounds of ammunition, so not only is your alpha damage 50 higher in the 5A than the 113, but you carry 4 extra additional shells, which means that your potential damage is 33% higher. So now onto the gun handling, and you'd expect this 130mm main armament should perform worse than the 122mm that's on the 113. But that's simply not the case with aim time. Its aim time is 0.25. That is really good for a 130mm main armament. We're talking about 0.3 seconds better than the 113 and 0.6 better than the IS-7. And thankfully the vehicle's dispersion values when moving, when turning the tank, and also when turning the turret are identical to the 113 and just slightly better when moving and traversing the vehicle than the IS-7. And so that means that this larger caliber gun on the 5A is just going to handle better than the 113 and the IS-7. But just don't expect it to be very accurate at long ranges because it has 0.39 meters dispersion at 100 meters. That's worse than the 113 and only slightly better than the IS-7. One thing that I really did enjoy about the 5A is that it has lots of gun elevation, 23 degrees to be exact, and so if your opponents are above you, you can just point straight up at them and continue to engage them. And this leads me on to my favorite aspect about the tank, that is 7 degrees of gun depression. Now, the eagle-eyed of you might be noticing that the 113 has 7 degrees of gun depression, and that wasn't the case until the next patch. The 113's gun depression has been buffed over the side of the vehicle, as we can see here, to 7 degrees. But it's still going to be limited to 5 degrees over the front of the tank and 1 degree over the back. The 5A, on the other hand, has 7 degrees of gun depression all around the front and the side, and it's only severely limited over the back to the same 1 degree of depression as the 113. And so this really makes the 5A just so comfortable for working ridge lines and pips the 113 over the front of the vehicle and the IS-7 all around the tank. So now onto mobility, and we can see that the 5A has the same great top speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour as the 113, but of course that doesn't quite compete with the IS-7's ferocious 59.6 kilometer an hour top speed limit forwards. But top speed limit doesn't really mean everything if you don't have the power to weight ratio to back it up, and thankfully it's 15. That's rather healthy indeed. Not quite as healthy as the 113's 16.67. That vehicle really is ludicrously fast, and it is just a touch behind the IS-7's 15.4, but look at the ground resistances. The 5A and the 113 are identical, and that's just a lot better than the IS-7's 0.13 on hard, 0.18 on medium, and 3.1 on soft. And so while this does mean that the 5A will be slower than the 113 because it has the same ground resistances and a worse power to weight ratio, I'd say it's actually going to be more mobile than the IS-7 on pretty much all terrains, despite the slight power to weight ratio disadvantage. And this further shows up when we check out the tank traverse of the vehicle. It's 36 degrees a second, way better than the IS-7's 28 degrees a second. And when you take this in conjunction with the terrain resistances, take a look how much better the 5A is than the IS-7 for turning, especially on medium terrain. It's over 50% better. So all of this is fine and dandy, but what is the point of a heavy tank if it can't take a hit? So let's check out the armor of the 5A. It's got 140mm at the front, 120 at the side, and 60 at the rear. That's 20mm thicker than the 113. But of course it can't compete with the IS-7's monstrous 150 at the front and 150 at the side. Turret armor wise though, the 5A looks like it's great. 300 at the front, 180 at the side, and 60 at the rear. That just looks better than the 113 and the IS-7. But it's very important to not jump to conclusions. So let's take a look at the 3D model. Well, interestingly enough, the lower plate on the 111 5A is 155mm thick. And so this means that even when you're not angling the tank, it's still about 230mm of effective armor. Most tier 8 and some tier 9 tanks are going to struggle to get through that when you're not angling the vehicle. And that's completely different to the 113, for example. Take a look how weak the 113's lower plate is at 120mm. When you don't angle the 113, everybody knows how easy it is to penetrate. So what about the upper plate of the 111 5A? Well, we can see when we're not angling it here, some parts of it are an auto ricochet, some parts are about 230 right at the front here, and the side goes up to about 240, 250. The 113, on the other hand, has 230. You know what, it's about the same. But let's see how well we can angle the 113 without overexposing the side armor, and what happens when we angle the 5A like this. And because of this angled beak shape of the 5A, when we angle the vehicle to the side here, the whole of this side armor becomes rather easy to penetrate, 220 all along this plate. Whereas when we look at the 113's uniform slope, we can see it's got about 240 in its weaker parts, ranging up to about 260 there. And so that means if a 5A is angling like this against you, try and shoot all of the plate along here. Let's just take a look at the visual to make that even clearer. Yes, you want to be shooting this plate here. You don't want to be shooting this area. This will be an auto ricochet. This too. You want to hit this area along the vehicle. But if you do have about 250mm of penetration, you can see the lower plate. You should take that as well. So what about the turret armor on the 5A frontally? Wow, that is thick. 300mm in most of the parts here. Some of the areas of the mantlet do have issues, and the cheeks on the side here are about 500mm thick. That is decent indeed. And that's actually very comparable to the 113, as we can see here. The 113 does have a slightly larger mantlet, but to the left and to the right of the gun, it's actually slightly weaker, especially against high penetration heat ammunition. But one thing you might be noticing about the 5A is it does have some rather mediocre cupolas. 180mm of impact armor here, that's 215 effective. The other cupola, however, is 210, but still 225mm of effective armor, and we can see how much less prominent the 113's cupolas are here. And so all in all, it feels like while the lower plate might be better on the 5A, because of the angling of the armor, it's just all round worse than the upper plate of the 113. And I'd say the turret on the 113 is all round better, especially with the smaller cupolas, but to the left and to the right of the gun, you might still have issues, but if you keep moving, it should be quite tricky for that to hit. But of course, the real winner frontally is still the IS-7. Even if you give up your lower plate like this, 230mm of effective armor, and the whole of your upper hull is 280 to 300. Yeah, and good luck getting through the IS-7's turret with anything but the highest penetration premium rounds off a tier 10 tank destroyer. And so finally, the vehicle has 2,200 hit points, slightly lower than the 113, slightly higher than the IS-7, and the vehicle has a decent 400 meters view range and a 12% chance to be set on fire. But you know what? I think that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's get stuck into some gameplay. So here we go, rolling out on Westfield on the 9.19.1 test server, and just get an idea of the mobility of the WZ-111 5A and how we can accelerate up this slope. My favorite place to go on Westfield at the start of the map will be to fight along this ridge here. Hopefully I can get some spots out, although we don't have any artillery on our team, but then again, at least I don't have to worry about artillery on the enemy team either. So we were going up slope there about 30, 35. Now we're starting to go up the real steep stuff. We're down to 15, but we pop up, we get a couple of spots, and then we pull back. We didn't really get as many tanks as I thought that I was going to get there. Where are the rest of them going to appear? Well, there's the Centurion. Oh, there's the Gorilla. He hits me in my gun, and it looks like it damages my gun, but doesn't knock out, should we say, or go into the vehicle. So it looks like my mantlet did absorb there. And there's our first one in. And I tell you what, This 130mm does feel rather rewarding. Wow, a heat round enters our vehicle. Where did that one go in? Oh, right through the front of the hull, as we can see there. But I aim my armor-piercing round through the lower plate of the 111 5A. I did try to avoid using as many premium rounds and premium consumables as I did on the test server to try and give you guys a realistic idea of how this vehicle might be able to be played. But of course, that doesn't mean that the enemy tanks weren't using premium rounds, but you're just going to have to judge the vehicle's armor based on that. So do you notice how awesome this 7 degrees of gun depression feels? It just feels absolutely incredible along these ridge lines. I was thinking, why did the Jagdpanzer not shoot me in that poor Object 263 behind me, right? Look at this lovely shot, cresting the ridge, silly T10 E3. And that aim time, it just feels so nice. The 2.5 seconds aim time on this vehicle. I really feel like the gun handling on this rather large caliber gun, it almost feels like I'm playing a mouse, but, oh, does that mouse think that I shot him in the back of the turret? I didn't shoot him in the back of the turret. I think it was that Leopard on my team, or the 263. And another round there into the T10 E3's lower plate. Decent start to this game. Am I really up to 3,000 damage already? That almost doesn't make sense to me. It shows you how few rounds you actually have to put into your opponents, right? And if you're putting a round into the Gorilla, a couple of rounds into the 5A, 2 rounds into the E3, and now 2 rounds into the 113, you are doing rather well. So the mouse wants to come around the corner, and this is where I just feel so comfortable with 7 degrees of gun depression. I can depress my gun enough to be shooting at the weak points of the enemy vehicles. And that 113, well, he's not feeling very well now as we put our 3rd round into him. Oh, actually, sorry, no, we haven't put our 3rd round in. I believe we did some spotting rather than actual damage there. But now we're up to 5,000 damage. Hopefully we can come around the corner to finish off this 113 right into the lower plate. I don't think I would have penned a 5A there if I'd fired down on his lower plate like that. But I don't quite manage to find the 113, but we're just plowing along, right? This vehicle, the aim time feels great, but it's the DPM, it's this conjunction of aim time, DPM, and 7 degrees of gun depression, and having the mobility, like, whoa, this medium tank's like, whoa, what are you doing? And when we think about it, the differences between the 121 and the 111 5A are not all really that much. Now, because I was able to get right up behind that 121, he's got very bad gun depression over the back of the tank, so he was unable to depress enough to be able to go through my armor there, and he bounces a heat round off the upper plate of this vehicle. An APCR round from the T62A does enter, and will we be able to hit this tier 10 light tank? Yes, we will. There we go. 6,600 damage, guys, in 3.5 minutes, I believe. That is not bad. I think we're firing pretty much about 70% of the time. Maybe some of you will get that reference there. So, right now, enemies have taken our cap circle, even though we have pretty much murdered 3 tier 10 tanks by myself. Well, at least hit points wise on that flank. We're still going to have to do a little bit more here. So there's a Gorilla behind me. I'm not sure where everybody is right now. There's a TVP sitting on the other side, and there you go. He puts one into us, a heat round. He bounces his 2nd heat round. He bounces his 3rd heat round, and I put one right into the back of his tank. 547 damage dealt, and he is cooking. Doesn't look like that guy takes a fire extinguisher, but looks like he might have a fire extinguishing crew, as he does put it out rather quickly. Will we put our next one in? Oh yeah, 496 damage, and that's not even really a high roll with this gun. Hopefully you guys are seeing just how much this 490 alpha damage completely rocks. So now up to 8,000, and this Bat Chantillon 25T is plowing around this corner. There's one into him, but the Leopard snags me. Oh dear. Bat Chat, I can't reverse out of this one. I've just got to pray that he misses his heat rounds, but is that going to be the case? We put one more into him and try to charge into him for death. Unfortunately, he shuts us down, but we managed to do 9,000 damage in less than 5 minutes in this round. And after a little bit of faffing, finally my team managed to find a kill into the Leopard, and we take down this round on the test server. So this was an ace tanker on the test server, 1,310 base experience points, 9,042 damage does get us a high caliber, and we also get a Confederate as well, for damaging 6 tanks that were subsequently killed by our allies. And as I didn't fire any heat rounds this game, we make a 73,000 credits profit. So the WZ-111 Model 5A looks like a really promising tier 10 Chinese heavy tank. And while its mobility, its upper hull armor, and its turret are not quite as good as the 113, I feel that its aim time advantage, its alpha damage advantage, its lower plate armor, and its 7 degrees of gun depression over the front of this tank make it a really interesting choice to make compared to the 113. And I'm personally pretty excited to pick one of these up when 9.19.1 is released. And I do expect it to be one of the most competitive tier 10 heavy tanks, especially in the hands of an experienced player. I'm not sure that beginners are going to do too well in this vehicle. I think they'd be better suited in something more forgiving like an IS-7 or one of the super heavies. But if you're a lover of medium tanks and looking to transition into playing some of the faster heavies, I think the 111 5A will be really up your street. And so hopefully you enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful to you. If it was, please give it a like, I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments what you think about the WZ-111 5A and how it stacks up to its Tier 10 Chinese counterpart, the 113. And also, just to clarify, now that the ranked beta season is over, my Twitch stream is going to be getting back to normal, shall we say. I guess there's going to be a little less frustration and so hopefully a few more entertaining moments, banter and jokes. And of course, variety and pole tanks. And so as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.